All right, Jupiter, say hello to everyone. I know you guys can't see Jupiter, but he is right over here. Actually, let's see if I can do this. Yep, there he is. You're famous, Jupiter. Too cold out there for you, little guy. Well, how's everyone doing tonight? Let me know you can see me and hear me. Uh, well, here in the Dallas area, about 30 minutes south of Dallas. Don't knock my monitor over. Thanks. About 30 minutes south of Dallas, if even that much, is where I live in a town called Waxahachie. Waxahachie. I've lived here a year. Still not sure on the proper pronunciation, but I think it's wax. Anyway, yesterday it it got to 71 degrees. It was a beautiful day. My wife was off yesterday, and I told her when she got home that it was good that the weather was just perfect because yesterday 71, today it's 25 degrees cooler. So it's going to hit 34 degrees tonight. So you guys see me and hear me okay? So, for those of us from the north, 34 degrees is not that cold, but thanks, Alan. Hey, Mark, Darren, Suzanne, Kelly. It's not that cold, but you know, for these folks down here, they're cold, and Danielle's blood has thinned over the last 14 years. So, hi, Paula. Uh, so anyway, no matter where you're from, if you're out in 34 degrees for too long without the proper jacket and so forth, you're going to be cold. But anyway, it just seemed like a lot more like Christmas today than yesterday. And for most people, yesterday was a beautiful day. I was glad it was so beautiful. Danielle and Logan and I hung some Christmas lights outside, which is to say that my wife and my son did it, and I watched and gave helpful suggestions. So, uh, yeah, Berkeley, 34 degrees, Kelly. I believe you. It probably hasn't been near that cold for a while. Although I am no expert on California. I've been there one time. Anyway, yeah. So, Jupiter thought he wanted to be outside for a while, and now he's convinced that he doesn't want to be. So he was just on my lap, all snuggled in for a while, and I'm going to read a story for you guys, and then we're going to go back to sitting in my easy chair and with Jupiter the cat. Monty's around here somewhere too. They're both here in the bookhouse. 20s. Yeah, it doesn't get in the 20s too often here in North Texas, Alan. Uh, so, of course, today's my kind of weather. I like it. The only way it could have been better is if there was a drizzle or light rain, freezing rain falling. That would have been even better. After Danielle got home, of course. Anyway, how's your week going so far? I guess we're 2/5 of the way through the work week, right? For most people. I want to last week I read, for those of you who weren't here, I read The Festival by H.P. Lovecraft. And I thought I would read an M.R. James story tonight. And Then I'm going to try and find some more horror-themed Christmas stories for the remainder of the Tuesdays in December. So, are you guys ready for Christmas? Let's see. I guess as of tomorrow, we're exactly 2 weeks away from Christmas, right? So, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate. Either way, thanks for being here, guys. To my patrons, especially, thank you for the support. I really appreciate it, guys. Darren, remind me, where do you live? Darren says he had a red flag warning. Oh, San Diego. I'm sorry, I should have read the whole thing. Because of the wind and the fire danger. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's too bad. And Kelly, remind me where you're living now. Heavy fog in Maryland. Hey, Mark. All right, so wanted to kill a couple of minutes for those who arrived late, but I guess it's 6 minutes after the hour, so I might as well start. As I said, I'm going to read a short story by M.R. James. Now, a couple of things on this short story. I'm going by memory, so um, I'm going to pull it back up again here on Wikipedia. Written in 1935, it's the shortest of his stories, and it's the last story that he wrote. Wikipedia says it's an unusually autobiographical story that seems to be based on an incident in James' early life, when it is said he had experience in a haunted plantation. A vignette was first published in November 1936 in the literary journal The London Mercury, 5 months after his death. All right. Fog, yeah, always so atmospheric. All right, here we go, guys. Thanks for being here. A Vignette by M.R. James. You are asked to think of a spacious garden of a country rectory, adjacent to a park of many acres, and separated therefrom by a belt of trees of some age, which we knew as the plantation. It is but 30 or 40 yards broad. A close gate of split oak leads to it from the path encircling the garden, and when you enter it, from that side you put your hand through a square hole cut in it, and lift the hook to pass along to the iron gate which admits to the park from the plantation. It has further to be added that from some windows of the rectory, which stands on a somewhat lower level than the plantation, parts of the path leading thereto and the oak gate itself can be seen. Some of the trees, Scotch firs and others which form a backing and surrounding, are of considerable size. But there is nothing that diffuses a mysterious gloom or imparts a sinister flavor. Nothing of melancholy or funereal associations. The place is well clad, and there are secret nooks and retreats among the bushes, but there is neither offensive bleakness nor oppressive darkness. It is, indeed, a matter for some surprise when one thinks it over, that any cause for misgivings of a nervous sort have attached itself to so normal and cheerful a spot. The more so, since neither our childish mind when we lived there, nor the more inquisitive years that came later, ever nosed out any legend or reminiscence of old or recent unhappy things. Yet to me they came, even to me, leading an exceptionally happy, wholesome existence, and guarded, not strictly, but as carefully as was any way necessary, from uncanny fancies and fears. Not that such guarding avails to close up all gates. I should be puzzled to fix the date at which any sort of misgiving about the plantation gate first visited me. Possibly it was in the years just before I went to school. Possibly on one later summer afternoon of which I have a faint memory, when I was coming back after solitary roaming in the park, or, as I bethink me, from tea at the hall. Anyhow, alone, and fell in with one of the villagers, also homeward bound, just as I was, about to turn off the road onto the track leading to the plantation. We broke off our talk with good nights, and when I looked back at him after a minute or so, I was just a little surprised to see him standing still and looking after me. But no remark passed, and on I went. By the time I was within the iron gate and outside the park, dusk had undoubtedly come on, but there was no lack yet of light, and I could not account to myself for the questionings which certainly did arise as to the presence of anyone else among the trees, questionings to which I could not very certainly say no, nor, I was glad to feel, yes, because if there were anyone, they could not well have any business there. To be sure, it is difficult, in anything like a grove, to be quite certain that nobody is making a screen out of a tree trunk and keeping it between you and him as he moves round it and you walk on. All I can say is that if such a one was there, he was no neighbor or acquaintance of mine, and there was some indication about him of being cloaked or hooded. But I think I may have moved at a rather quicker pace than before, and have been particular about shutting the gate. I think, too, that after that evening something of what Hamlet calls a gain giving may have been present in my mind when I thought of the plantation. I do seem to remember looking out of a window which gave in that direction, and questioning whether there was, or was not, any appearance of a moving form among the trees. If I did, and perhaps I did, hint a suspicion to the nurse, the only answer to it will have been the height of such a thing and an injunction to make haste and get into my bed. Whether it was on that night or a later one that I seemed to see myself again in the small hours, gazing out of the window across moonlit grass, and hoping I was mistaken in fancying any movement in that half-hidden corner of the garden, I cannot now be sure. But it was certainly within a short while that I began to be visited by dreams which I would much rather not have had, which, in fact, I came to dread acutely, and the point round which they centered was the plantation gate. As years go on, but seldom happens that a dream is disturbing. Awkward it may be, as when, while I am drying myself after a bath, I open the bedroom door and step out onto a populous railway platform and have to invent rapid and flimsy excuses for the deplorable dishabille. But such a vision is not alarming, though it may make one despair of ever holding one's head up again. But in the times of which I am thinking, it did happen, not often, but oftener than I liked, that the moment a dream set in, I knew that it was going to turn out ill, and that there was nothing I could do to keep it on cheerful lines. Dave, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Ellis the gardener might be wholesomely employed with rake and spade as I watched at the window. Other familiar figures might pass and repass on harmless errands, but I was not deceived. I could see that the time was coming when the gardener and the rest would be gathering up their properties and setting off on paths that led homeward or into some safe outer world, and the garden would be left to itself, shall we say, or to denizens who did not desire quite ordinary company, and were only waiting for the word all clear to slip into their posts of vantage. Now, too, was the moment near when the surroundings began to take on a threatening look, that the sunlight lost power, and a quality of light replaced it which, though I did not know it at the time, my memory years after told me was the lifeless pallor of an eclipse. The effect of all this was to intensify the foreboding that had begun to possess me, and to make me look anxiously about, dreading that in some quarter my fear would take on a visible shape. I had not much doubt which way to look. Surely behind those bushes, among those trees, there was motion, yes, and surely, and more quickly than seemed possible, there was motion, now not among the trees, but on the very path towards the house. I was still at the window, and before I could adjust myself to the new fear, there came the impression of a tread on the stairs, and a hand at the door. That was as far as the dream got at first, and for me it was far enough. I had no notion what would have been the next development, more than that it was bound to be horrifying. That is enough in all conscience about the beginning of my dreams. A beginning it was only, for something like it came again and again. How often I can't tell, but often enough to give me an acute distaste for being left alone in that region of the garden. I came to fancy that I could see in the behavior of the village people whose work took them that way, an anxiety to be past a certain point, and moreover a welcoming of company as they approached that corner of the park. But on this it will not do to lay overmuch stress, for, as I have said, I could never glean any kind of story bound up with the place. However, the strong possibility that there had been one once, I cannot deny. I must not, by the way, give the impression that the whole of the plantation was haunted ground. There were trees there most admirably devised for climbing and reading in. There was a wall, along the top of which you could walk for many hundred yards, and reach a frequented road passing farmyard and familiar houses. And once in the park, which had its own delights of wood and water, you were well out of range of anything suspicious, or, if that is too much to say, of anything that suggested the plantation gate. But I am reminded as I look on these pages that so far we have had only preamble, and that there is very little in the way of actual incident to come, and that the criticism attributed to the devil when he sheared the sow is like to be justified. What, after all, was the outcome of the dreams to which, without saying a word about them, I was liable during a good space of time. Well, it presents itself to me thus. One afternoon, the day being neither overcast nor threatening, I was at my window in the upper floor of the house. All of the family were out. From some obscure shelf in a disused room, I had worried out a book, not very recondite. It was, in fact, a bound volume of a magazine in which contained parts of a novel. I know now what novel it was, but I did not then, and a sentence struck and arrested me. Someone was walking at dusk up a solitary lane by an old mansion in Ireland, and being a man of imagination, he was suddenly, forcibly impressed by what he calls the aerial image of the old house, with its peculiar malign, scared, and skulking aspect, peering out of the shade of its neglected old trees. The words were quite enough to set my own fancy on a bleak track. Inevitably, I looked and looked with apprehension to the plantation gate. As was but right, it was shut, and nobody was upon the path that led to it or from it. But as I said a while ago, there was in it a square hole, giving access to the fastening, and through that hole I could see, and it struck like a blow on the diaphragm, something white, or partly white. Now this I could not bear, and with an access of something like courage, only it was more like desperation, like determining that I must now know the worst, I did steal down, and quite uselessly, of course, taking cover behind bushes as I went. I made progress until I was within range of the gate and the hole. Things were, alas, worse than I'd feared. Through that hole, a face was looking my way. It was not monstrous, not pale, fleshless, spectral. Malevolent, I thought and think it was. At any rate, the eyes were large and open and fixed. It was pink and, I thought, hot, and just above the eyes, the border of a white linen drapery hung down from the brows. There is something horrifying in the sight of a face looking out of a frame as this did, more particularly if its gaze is unmistakably fixed upon you. Nor does it make the matter any better if the expression gives no clue to what is to come next. I said just now that I took this face to be malevolent, and so I did, but not in regard of any positive dislike or fierceness which it expressed. It was indeed quite without emotion. I was only conscious that I could see the whites of the eyes all around the pupil, and that we know has a glamour of madness about it. The immovable face was enough for me. I fled, but at what I thought must be a safe distance inside my own precincts. I could not but halt and look back. There was no white thing framed in the hole of the gate, but there was a draped form shambling away among the trees. Do not press me with questions as to how I bore myself when it became necessary to face my family again. That I was upset by something I had seen must have been pretty clear, but I am very sure that I fought off all attempts to describe it. Why I make a lame effort to do it now, I cannot very well explain. It undoubtedly has had some formidable power of clinging through many years to my imagination. I feel that even now I should be circumspect in passing that plantation gate, and every now and again the query haunts me. Are there here and there sequestered places which some curious creatures still frequent, whom once upon a time anybody could see and speak to as they went about their daily occasions? Whereas now, only at rare intervals, in a series of years, does one cross their paths and become aware of them. And perhaps that is just as well for the peace and mind of simple people. M.R. James, 1862 to 1936. You know, not the same content at all, or even close to it, but it reminds me of The Horla by Guy de Maupassant. He wrote that story, if memory serves, about some sort of creature, invisible creature that was stalking him or haunting him. I need to reread it. But right after that, he was committed to an insane asylum, I believe. So it's just made me think of that. If I had known I was going to think of that, I would have looked it up in my second brain. Yeah, let's look that up. The Horla. Short story by Guy de Maupassant. Oh, right. A horror story written in the style of a journal after an initial, much shorter version published in the newspaper in 1886. The story has been cited as an inspiration for Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu, which also features an extraterrestrial being who influences minds and who is destined to conquer humanity. Yeah, it could have been the syphilis, Alan, but it's more fun to think that he was being stalked by the Horla and that this is a true story. At least it's more fun for me. Probably wasn't very fun for Guy de Maupassant, but yeah, if it, I think probably most of you have read the Horla, but if you haven't, you should check it out. If for no other reason than the inspiration for Call of Cthulhu, which may or may not be true, but a lot of people do seem to think that that's true. Oh, you guys know I'm a fan of Mystery Theater. Well, all old time radio, but Mystery Theater aired from 1974 to 1982. I listened to it growing up, and they did an adaptation of the Horla. And, as with a lot of Mystery Theater, there's either, depending on the episode, a slight element of camp or more than a slight element of camp. But and there's always the nostalgia factor. But I thought that it's a pretty good adaptation. So check it out. Yeah. Oswald says, should ending up in an asylum be an inspiration for horror writers? If not, maybe so. If not just for writers, probably for listeners too of this podcast. and my other podcasts. Um, oh, Kelly, you've heard it. Yeah, it's a fun little episode. So, to all of you who are watching live and to all of you who will be watching this later, thanks for spending a few minutes with me. Of course, we are going to do a Thursday show, as always, or I should say, almost always. And I'm pulling up the Lovecraft Easing calendar to remind myself. Oh, right, who's going to be on the Sunday podcast this week? Alan Santiago Caruso is going to be on the podcast. He was at Necronomicon with us. In fact, his table was kind of right across from us. I don't know if you had a chance to go look at his work and talk to him, but very talented guy. Yeah, okay, I'm glad you did. Very talented guy and a very nice guy, very humble guy. Lucas, hello. Dave, she did return just in time because I had just run out of the food that you sent. So it was none too soon. Um, yes, he is, Lucas. And so yeah, just in time. I was gonna starve, but she's back. Yeah, they had a great time, bud. Thanks for asking. Um, they did so many things. Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, visited uh, Times Square, the Empire State Building. What else? Oh, Ground Zero, and just uh, they really love the experience. Yeah, Oswald, you make a fair point. You know, um, horror, especially like cosmic horror and weird fiction. My favorite kinds of horror. There's this element of wonder to it and awe to it. You're sort of half horrified or terrified or frightened and half um, in awe of what is occurring. Um, so yeah, definitely. Macy's Day, a cool dinner they went to after. They did, but I forgot where they ate. But they also did see. I don't know if it was a musical or a play. They told me, and I keep forgetting. But it was called Six. It was about Henry VIII and his wives. Um, you know, so if you're sleeping on the couch, husbands, that's what you can say. Hey, at least I'm not ordering for your head to be chopped off. I'm better than Henry VIII. Admittedly, a low bar, but anyway, listen. I forgot to keep forgetting to say, but if you're enjoying these live readings, email me if you have any requests. Now they have to be in the public domain, or I need to know the writer, and the writer needs to be willing for me to read the short story and have the rights for me to read it. So you're probably best sticking to public domain. But you can either email me at lovecrafteasing@gmail.com, or you can comment below this video. I will see those too. So, so anyway, guys, we're gonna have some more merch soon. The next couple of days, I'm gonna be sequestering myself and working on. I'm gonna be retooling the Patreon a little bit. Um, adding some cool things and ideas. Thanks for your suggestions, Alan. I'm going to be also adding to the merch store what we have now, and then Alan is working on some more merch art for me. Bridget's going to as well, but she's been kind of busy of late, so it might be a while on that, but we got some more merch coming. The link is in the show notes, and if you want a Lovecraft Using podcast um, mug or T-shirt, or if you want that cool mug with the art that Alan created of Joe Pulver welcoming Rick Lay to Carcosa, that's all pretty cool. So, as a matter of fact, I have the original. It's dark in here. Oh, right there. That black and white right back there is by Mr. Alan Hughes. And it's going to be worth a lot of money someday. I just have to outlive him. So, right, Alan? Anyway, thanks, guys. Thanks for spending part of your Tuesday evening with me, and a special thanks to the Patreons, especially this time of year when everybody wants to have enough money to give Christmas presents and everything, and for all of you who keep me going. I appreciate it more than you know. So thanks. Have a good night, and I will see you all Thursday night right here at 11 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night, guys.